from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack, Worley III.
Hey, Mack Pack. It's good to be with you today. I'm not really sure if everything's going to be working technically. Anyway, I'm not sure if things are going to work as they should today. I'm hoping that they will. And if you guys have any problems, feel free to message me on Facebook or any of our other social media, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter. You can always give us a call at 619-924-0986. There's always plenty of time for you guys if you have anything on your mind. But first and foremost, this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. And my name is Mack Worley III, and I'm your host. So I got a question for you guys. Before we get into today's show, I'm just curious, how many of you still have your Christmas tree up right now? Are any of you out there still have your Christmas tree sitting in your living room right now? I do right now. I still have my Christmas tree. It's been on my to-do list for like forever. I keep putting it off. I don't want to take it down. I really like Christmas, and I'm really not looking forward to taking down that tree. But my wife, she's getting on me about it. She really wants me to take that tree down. So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have to take it down within the next day or two here. But it's going to be sad. It's over. The Christmas season is going to be over, and I'm going to be sad. I don't want that to happen. So anyway. I'm really looking forward to today's show. We got a lot of stuff on the menu, and you guys will have to forgive me. First of all, we are experiencing some changes here. We're going through some growing pains, and in these growing pains here, we're now on the HaywireGulch.com network. We're simulcasting, so we're currently on HaywireGulch.com right now. If you go to their website, HaywireGulch.com, you go there. You listen to the live feed. You can listen to us there, or you can listen to us as you usually do at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. So we may have some growing pains here and have some technical difficulties. I'm sure, I'm probably going to do something wrong along this time, and I'm also hearing that we're getting a little low volume on the Haywire Gulch side. So let me crank up the volume a little bit, see if that's helpful at all. But additionally, we have another wrench in the spokes. I am also sick, and I've been sick for, it's been a while now. I can't seem to shake this bug, and my throat just feels like it's closing in on me. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. If throughout today's episode, somewhere down the line I start to lose my voice, I apologize, but we will end the show early at that point, unless you guys want to call in. And if you call in, I will put you on. You give my voice a rest. That'd be awesome. But I do have a lot to cover today, and we're going to press through, keep pushing forward, because the show must go on. And anyway, today is episode 57. I'm really excited about today's show. I touched on this show on the Haywire Gulch Network on Sounding Off with Tank and Tony. This was yesterday, and today's show is going to be about judicial review. I also want to touch on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it's the philosophy of freedom, at least the one that I go by. And I'm going to share it with you guys and apply it to some things that I've been hearing a lot recently. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the attacks that happened in France, and obviously there's been other attacks. And we, as Americans, are very familiar with the extremists attacking us during 9/11. So there's a lot of people that are for lack of a better word, hating on Muslims, so to speak. And I'm not a Muslim apologist, by the way. That's the other group of people. There are people out there. There's these two groups. You got people that are hating on the Muslims, and you got people that are apologizing for Muslims and trying to come up with reasons why Muslims are okay. All right. I want to apply my philosophy of freedom to this debate, and I think I can shed a little bit of light on this. For some of you who may be on the fence and not sure where to go, or maybe some of you that want to look in a different direction. But I'll tell you, I'm probably going to get some people angry at me, and I'm probably going to, on both sides of the aisle there, people are probably going to be angry at me because I tend to be right down the middle of things. And it's just because my personal philosophy of freedom and liberty it's really my guiding stone. It's what gives me the information I need to make a decision what I'm going to support or not. And sometimes I may feel differently too. There's a lot of situations where I may not like some particular group or what the group is doing, but I stand up and support them because of the right that they have to do whatever it is we're doing. And we'll get to that in a minute here. We're going to cover a whole lot. And also, I know a lot of you may be aware of the attack that happened in France, and they attacked this group of, I almost said insurgents, this group of extremist radical jihads. They attacked a news organization somewhat. I think they were cartoonists or something. They had some cartoons that they were writing that offended the prophet. And anyway, the point is that people are looking over their shoulder now, and I'm here to tell you, I'm not concerned. I'm not out to offend anybody, but at the same time, I believe in the right of free speech, and I stand with all of those in solidarity who believe in free speech. I will not spend my life afraid to speak my mind, and I challenge each and every one of you to do the same thing. Speak your mind. Don't be afraid, because that's how they win. If we're silent, we don't say anything, they won. So we all need to stand together for the right of free speech. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of funny that this all kind of happened at the same time. The North Korea thing where, President Obama, he said that Sony made a big mistake, and he was standing on the side of free speech, and he said that you should share that movie, right? He was telling Sony, share that movie, get it out there because it's free speech and all that. One thing I just want to point out is that this is a free speech issue. The terrorists have attacked free speech, literally have attacked it. You could not find a better way to attack free speech in the world. That's not America. This is France. But now even American journalists are looking over their shoulders saying, okay, I got to be careful what I say. You never know. I may offend the Prophet Muhammad. You never know. And now I got to look over my shoulder. And these guys have a long memory. It's interesting to me that Obama has not said anything about sharing the cartoons. And President Obama, this is also the same president that said the future does not belong to those who slandered the Prophet Muhammad. This is his words, not mine. I didn't. You can go look that up on YouTube. It's there, I promise you. In fact, I might look it up myself here and play it for you in a minute after I get done with this little rant that I'm on here. But anyway, I find it funny that he says that Sony should share the movie. Sony, but we all shouldn't share the cartoons that happened from this attack. I think that we all should share the cartoons. And I've actually noticed there's a lot of people on Facebook saying, I believe it's in French, saying I am Charlie. I believe is one of the guys that got killed in the thing there in the attack. Anyway, so I find this story kind of interesting in how it relates to our president, how he dealt with North Korea, and then how he deals with the Muslim extremists. So we're going to get into this a little more a little later in the show. But anyway, today's show, like I said, episode 57, it's titled Judicial Review, Philosophy of Freedom. And again, any of you who haven't already gone over there, go ahead and check out haywiregulch.com. And at this point, we are going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to enter into a couple other segments here. I got a lot of stuff to cover, and the very first thing we're going to do is a judicial review. Well, actually, disregard that. We're going to go into the Weekly Defender first, and then we're going to do judicial review. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign. Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
I'm Mack Worley III. This is On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. So if you're just tuning in, you didn't miss much, honestly. We were in the intro here. So anyway, so we are going to press forward here. We're going to enter into the favorite segment of the show, for me anyway. We like to call it the Weekly Defender. And this is the segment, for those of you who may be new to the show, this is a segment where we report about armed citizens in the news who've used their firearms to defend themselves, either themselves, their family, their property, something along those lines. So anyway, without further ado, here we go.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, so our first Weekly Defender we found in an article on the Oregonian. Now, just so you know, I found this online. I actually didn't read the Oregonian. A lot of you out there may not know, but I'm actually living in the Pacific Northwest, so I'm right on the border between, or like maybe 5 minutes away from Portland, Oregon. Okay, so I'm very familiar with the Oregonian. It's, you know, some people use it to line their bird cages. Some people wrap dead fish in it, but nobody reads it. So, but this one, this was online, and I found this here. We had a retired U.S. Customs agent. His name is Thomas Schneck. He returned home in Amboy, Washington, to find it ransacked. Schneck, a right-to-carry permit holder, drew a gun, searched the house, and found a man in his living room. The intruder spotted Schneck, fled to a bedroom, and pointed a gun at the former agent. A shootout ensued that eventually moved outside the home and prompted the criminal to flee. Police captured the thief several days later. Following the incident, Schneck told a local media outlet, "I spent 25 years as a federal agent and had occasionally drawn my weapon under various circumstances, but never had to fire it. To have to fire in my own home, it was hard to fathom." Schneck added, we all get lulled into a false sense of security, and if nothing happens, that's great. But in the event that something does occur nowadays, you can't trust that everything is going to be all right. I'm thankful I was able to refer to my training and keep a clear head. And this was just the other day. This was 5 January 2015. So that's a way to start off a new year, I guess, is to rob somebody's home and then have a shootout and all that stuff. But anyway, I think it's really important to know what he said there. You know, a lot of people get lulled into this false sense of security, and there's actually a psychological term for it. It's called the normalcy bias. So you assume that no matter what, nothing can go wrong because nothing has gone wrong to this date. Okay, that's called normalcy bias. So even if there's tons of signs and you got so much stuff saying that stuff's about to happen, it's easy to predict at this point that something bad's going to happen. And you got people who will have the normalcy bias and they say nothing's going to happen, I'll be fine. And you see this with like hurricanes and things like that. People refuse to leave. They refuse to take any kind of steps whatsoever to protect themselves. These kind of things happen quite a bit. And anyway, I could talk more about the normalcy bias and especially how it relates to prepping, but I'll go ahead and press forward to the next story here. Anyway, our next weekly defender we found on KABC in Los Angeles, California. Jeff Preach was at home in California when a man knocked on his door. Preach answered the door and had a brief conversation with the man before the stranger punched him in the face, went inside, and attempted to rob him. Preach tackled the intruder with the help of his friend Larry. Once Larry had the criminal under control, Preach went to another part of the home and retrieved the shotgun. Preach proceeded to hold the thief at gunpoint until the police arrived. And this was on the 5th of January, so 2 stories coming out the same day. Anyway, I love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to defend themselves. You have the right to protect your life. You have the right to protect your family's lives. You have a right to protect your property. And, of course, you have the right to protect your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. And if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself or you would like to talk about one of these stories, please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Or, again, we got tons of other ways that you can get a hold of us, like social media. You guys already have all that information. So, anyway, let's move on here. I want to go ahead and get into the judicial review topic here. And first things first, okay? What is judicial review? Do you know? I didn't know what it was that long ago either, so don't really feel bad about it, guys. It's okay. You actually do know what it is, even if you don't think you do. You just don't know its name. You just knew it was a process, but you didn't know it had a name. And it's basically the process of the Supreme Court being able to determine whether laws are unconstitutional or not. That is, in and of itself, judicial review. So every time that the Supreme Court is determining whether or not a law is unconstitutional, and they say, nope, that's not constitutional, and they nullify that law, they are actually practicing judicial review. And if they decide that they don't want to get involved with it, that's called judicial restraint. So these are two sides of the same coin, judicial review or judicial activism. If they start getting into it and start making changes, if they say that's unconstitutional, that's called judicial activism. If they say, I'm not going to get into this, that's not my, we don't want to be the ones to decide this here, so we won't, that's judicial restraint, okay? So those simple concepts first, all right? And why am I telling you guys about this right now? Why is this important? Well, first, think about this, all right? 9 people right now, just 9 people, that's all they are, is they're just human beings. They have the same abilities to err as you and I do. They have the same judgments. That they could have emotional responses. They could have biases. All of these things, 9 people right now are responsible for determining what is constitutional and what is not. And they are the ultimate arbiter of all things constitutional. And what do I mean by that? That means that there is no way at all that if the Supreme Court says that's unconstitutional, that we can do anything about it, short of actually ignoring them, number one, because they have no enforcement arm. They don't have the Supreme Court police, at least that I know of. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's underneath the executive branch anyway. So, and additionally, I guess we could do an act of Congress to impeach them, but that would require that they have committed some kind of crime. And, it would require the will of Congress to do something. And as we all know, Congress has no spine, no backbone, no will whatsoever. So if it was something that truly needed to be fought, it would be something that would not be able to be fought. But what you need to ask yourself first is not the question of if the Supreme Court is ever going to do something that you don't agree with or that is just completely wrong or unjust. You don't need to worry about that. The question is, where did they get this power from? Is it in the Constitution? Did you know that it wasn't in the Constitution anywhere? The Supreme Court never at all had the ability to actually determine whether or not laws are constitutional or not as they were originally founded. Do you know where they got that power from? They gave it to themselves. And we're going to get to that in a second and how that actually came about. But let's just also point out the fact that James Madison, all right, James Madison is actually the father of the Constitution. That's what everybody refers to him as, the father of the Constitution. James Madison said that Congress should be the ones to decide what is unconstitutional, what is not. And he said that if the Supreme Court was going to do it, he would be okay with that as long as the president, the executive, was there as well, serving on that court to decide what is constitutional or not. But that was never included into the Constitution. None of that would happen. And from what I understand, his actual preference was that Congress be the ones to decide if laws are unconstitutional, since they're the ones that make the laws. Okay? So this is the father of the Constitution. This is the guy who wrote the book, basically. And so what do we have here? Well, what happened? It's a very famous court case. And this whole thing, the whole power, every stinking bit of this power that they have is all based on case precedent, all right, that they set in a case called Marbury versus Madison in 1801 or 1802, I think, around one of those, 1801 or 1802. The story is really interesting, and the reason why I'm telling you is because I actually am pretty fascinated by the story. And when you're like me, all right, I think many of you are like me in regards to this, is that you look at history not like a bunch of boring dates, stats, just numbers. That's where a lot of people get burned out, all right? And I honestly, I really don't care too much about the dates. The dates don't mean a whole lot to me. The dates are just kind of like, I like to know within a time period. That way I know what the feel of the time period was, because I know some of the history around that time period, you know? So obviously 1776 is a really important date. You know the history around what was going on in the country at that time. There I go again, coughing, excuse me. So we're already starting to get worn down here. I can feel my throat closing here. Okay, so anyway, so this is around 1802, and Chief Justice John Marshall, all right, before he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he was Secretary of the State, and that was under the Adams administration. That's John Adams. And if any of you are very familiar with the anti-federalist and federalist movement situation that was going on there, Adams came into office, and he was trying to be like George Washington, okay? And, you know, everybody wants to be like Washington. Why not? I mean, it's George Washington. He's awesome, right? So he was trying to be like Washington, and he didn't want to have a party. He didn't want to affiliate with a party. And him and Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, were running against each other for the presidency. And Thomas Jefferson became the vice president. And in those times, the vice president really didn't do much. So he basically didn't have a job to do. He just sat around, and in case the president died, he would fill in at that point. But so anyway, during this time, Adams is trying to stay without a party. He doesn't want to be affiliated with a party. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the party. And Thomas Jefferson is starting to get a hold of this anti-federalist movement, and he's starting to get behind it. And then at some point, he turns a corner and basically betrays Adams, all right, John Adams. And they were friends for years and years and years before this, and then he stabbed him in the back, Thomas Jefferson. I really like Thomas Jefferson, by the way. I'm not trying to, slander the guy. This is just the facts. This is what he did. And then later they befriended each other again down the line, which is actually a really great story, another excellent story in history that I'd love to talk to you guys about. In fact, I will after this here. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, at this period, Thomas Jefferson is now real heavy into the anti-federalist movement, which is basically trying to keep the government small. Keep the government small. I like Thomas Jefferson. He's an anti-federalist. I think if I was back in those days, I think that I would be a anti-federalist. How about you guys? The Federalists were all about big government, trying to get a strong centralized federal power. So, but yeah. Anyway, so Adams, he's on his way out. He's just lost the election, and Thomas Jefferson is now on his way in. Thomas Jefferson just won the election. He's on his way in, and Adams he goes through these midnight commissions where it's like the last night where he's about to be the president, and he starts writing all these commissions for positions in the government, okay? And he's expecting them to be sent out. Well, John Marshall, who was the Secretary of the State, he's trying to get all this stuff done. He's running around trying to get all these commissions done, and then he goes over to the Supreme Court, becomes Chief Justice over there. So he's Chief Justice John Marshall. Walking into Secretary of the State, we got James Madison. James Madison now is Secretary of State for Thomas Jefferson. All right, Thomas Jefferson doesn't like Adams. He's like, screw that guy. We're not going to give those commissions out. Throw those suckers away. We're not giving them. And Madison is like, okay, Mr. President, I'll do what you want. Yes, sir. Anyway, so one of these commissions was for a justice of the peace for a gentleman named Marbury. Okay, his last name was Marbury. And Marbury went to President Jefferson and was like, "Hey, where the heck are my commissions here? It's me and a bunch of other people. They were supposed to give me the commission. I know that Adams wrote them, so where are they?" And anyway, they just blew him off. So what Marbury did was he sued James Madison, the new Secretary of State, for these commissions. All right, he sued them and he took them to court. And not only did he take him to court, but he took James Madison to the Supreme Court. All right, and he claimed that the administration, the Jefferson administration, had violated the Judiciary Act of 1789. And I know this is a lot of information, so let's go ahead and just recap here, okay? Marbury versus Madison. We know the players of the game now. Marbury's the guy who wants to get his commission for Justice of the Peace. Madison is the Secretary of the State, okay? Thomas Jefferson's the president. There's a beef between him and Adams, which is why he didn't want to give up the actual commissions, because he wanted to kind of stick it to the people who were his friends. And this is the anti-federalist, federalist feud that's going on. So, again, what's going on with this Judiciary Act of 1789? How did that violate? How did he violate the Judiciary Act by not giving the commissions? Well, according to the Act, excuse me, they said that the Supreme Court had the power to issue what is called a writ of mandamus. And I'm probably butchering how you say that, a writ of mandamus, which would essentially force the president to give up these commissions. He had no choice but to give the commissions. And this is a law that was passed by Congress. So, this law has been issued by Congress, so it's on the books, and he thought this would be a good justification to do this. All right. So the problem is that Chief Justice John Marshall, he took the case, and then he realized, okay, I don't really have the jurisdiction to do this. This isn't a case that should have necessarily came to me, because this could have been handled at a lower level of a court. And the way the law was written, I won't get into all the boring stuff here and technical stuff that may lose you guys. But long story short, the Supreme Court, they decided, hey, there's no such thing as a writ of mandamus anywhere in the Constitution. And this should never have come to us first. It should have been handled at a lower level. So what Chief Justice John Marshall did, instead of using this as an opportunity to make himself look weak, because you have to understand, back in the day when we're talking about the 1800s, okay, this country was only like 30 years old, 24 years old, if I'm 26 years old. I'm horrible at math. Anyway, very young. It's a very, very young country. And, people were concerned about the country just being there when they woke up. They didn't know if the country would fall apart. The government was not really that strong, especially right after the Revolution. I mean, we had the Articles of Confederation. There was a point where the country might actually fall apart and people were concerned. So this wasn't that long ago, okay? So if Chief Justice John Marshall decided to do something that went against the White House, against the president, and made them issue these appointments, what if the president just said, no, I'm not going to do it? What are you going to do about it, Supreme Court? You're going to send your army? Oh, wait, you don't have one. I do. Ha ha. That's one of the big reasons there why he didn't want to say, yeah, you got to do this, because he knew that the president would just ignore him. And then that would essentially create a precedent where the Supreme Court is useless. They're kind of figureheads, very similar to like the king or queen of England, those kind of people that are just acting like they're important. So, but he also didn't want to lose the opportunity and make himself appear weak, because there was a law that said that he should do this. So what he did is he seized the opportunity to actually expand the power. And this is Chief Justice John Marshall, very important name throughout history. He used this as an opportunity to expand the court's powers by saying this law is unconstitutional. Yes, there is a law that says I have to do this. However, this law is unconstitutional. And because of that, I'm not going to do that. It's nullified, okay? At that point, the court started a precedent to where they could say this is unconstitutional, that's unconstitutional, that's constitutional, all this stuff, and they became the ultimate arbiter on all things constitutional, okay? All right, so now we got that out of there, okay? I've explained that process. I hope you guys understand up to that point. Anyway, so let's talk about what that means for the country, okay? The United States Supreme Court, it's actually pretty surprising. People say that, actually Hamilton for one, Alexander Hamilton, he said that the judiciary branch was the least branch that we'd have to worry about, essentially. I'm paraphrasing roughly, but that it was the one that had the least ability to hurt the public. And upon its creation, that's true. However, the Supreme Court, a lot of people don't think it's really important. A lot of people don't think about it, and people don't know who the judges are. People don't think about it at all. But it has shaped this country. When you think about it, think about Congress, for example, okay, and government in general. Government is just always trying to get in every aspect of your life, okay? Government wants in everywhere, okay? So the Supreme Court is essentially slapping down laws left and right. This is unconstitutional, that's unconstitutional. And it's like a sculptor. You start chiseling away at some things, you allow what you allow to be law, and then you slap away or chip away at the things that are unconstitutional, and you have the shape of your government. And they have essentially shaped or sculpted our government. They've done so by court rulings, and those court rulings set precedents, and those precedents set more precedents. What will happen is if you have a ruling and you find that somebody ruled one way on it, okay, there may be another way that you can approach that case to have a gray area, and then they rule on it again, and then there's another gray area split off of there, and it goes and goes and goes, and that's basically what court cases are. And lately I've been getting into learning about court cases myself, and for me, one thing I love about history is that it's basically just stories. If you forget the dates and you don't worry about that stuff so much, they're just stories. They're just really cool stories, and that's what I like to do. I like to read stories. I like to tell stories. I look at myself as like a storyteller here, basically. I'm not sure if I'm a particularly good one, but I am telling a story. And the point of history is not to remember the dates. You don't even have to necessarily remember the names, but it's important that you remember what happened and why. Those things are important. And if we don't remember those, then we're destined. It's like that saying, if those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. Well, that's the similar case here. So, in terms of court cases and learning about court precedent, you actually find it's pretty interesting. If you understand the stories, you hear it's kind of like watching Judge Judy. At least that's the way I feel. I hear about all these historical figures that I've heard about before, going to court and suing and hearing what their court case was about and what they're battling. It's all very interesting and fascinating to me. But let's talk in terms of the Supreme Court, okay? They obviously expanded their power. They got more power. They actually expanded it a little further. Chief Justice John Marshall, he was on a friggin' roll. He went on to actually make it so that the Supreme Court could actually be the final say, even in the state Supreme Courts. So he found a way to make a precedent off of that as well, and they became the ultimate arbiter on all things constitutional. So one thing I want to inform you guys on, if you aren't familiar with, you definitely need to check out this gentleman. His name is Mark Levin. He's a big time radio host, far bigger than anybody. They call him the Great One. If you don't know who he is, Mark Levin is really smart guy. He's a lawyer, and he's done his research. Okay. And I read his book. He has several books, but I read the one called The Liberty Amendments. I highly recommend that you check it out. It will help you understand the Constitution, and there's a lot of stuff that you can gain out of reading that book. But one thing in particular that you definitely want to read is the section about the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has essentially created a power vacuum, and they've had a moment here where there are checks and balances on every other branch except for them, because if they take a power that was never originally meant to be given to them, if this power was not in the Constitution, there's no checks and balances already set up. So right now, these guys, they sit for life, okay? They're appointed by a president. They're not voted on by anybody. They just get appointed by a president. Congress gets an opportunity to basically veto it. And then they not only are they appointed, but they sit for life. They sit for life. And that is very difficult for me to handle. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around somebody sitting on a court for life. Now, I'm a huge fan of term limits. I think that they should happen, and I'll get into that in a second. But and then lastly, there is no way to get around a Supreme Court ruling. If the Supreme Court says something's unconstitutional, that's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's unconstitutional. You can't do nothing about it. So, Mark Levin's Liberty Amendments, he has an answer to judicial review, and I'm a big fan of it. First answer, term limits. All right? Make sure that these people are only in there for 12 years. And every 4 years, 3 of them will come up for election. All right? And you do that based on the seniority. So the person who's been, the top 3 that have been on there the longest, they're out. The next top 3, they're out. And every 4 years, their term limit is up. Okay? Or not necessarily up for election, but I think they should be able to sit for the entire 12 years. And I believe that's what his proposal shows as well in the Liberty Amendments. But anyway, they're broken down into different seniority ranks every 4 years. But upon their 12th year, they're out. And then when they get out, a new 3 get selected by the president. Congress approves them, and then they're in there. Okay? So that's important. But if this is all supposed to be in a constitutional amendment, and perhaps I should have started with this. You'll have to forgive me. I'm sick, guys. I got a sick mind right now, sick brain, not working right. So anyway, this should all be in a constitutional amendment. And it would be an addition to the Constitution. And a lot of people get concerned about changing the Constitution. A lot of people are afraid to change the Constitution. And for me, the only thing I'm concerned about is changing 1 through 10. You can't change Amendments 1 through 10 because those were not given to us by the government. They were given to us either by your Creator or they are just natural human rights that we have. So those 10 can't change. And if they do change, it doesn't matter because they belong to us. Anyway, with that said, I want to come back to this in a second here because I see we have a caller, and I just realized I haven't picked this up here. So for those of you who are on Haywire Gulch, you may not hear this caller. I'm not sure how the audio is going to work, but for everybody on Blog Talk, you will hear the caller. So if you're on Haywire Gulch, I will go ahead and relay to you what he said after it, and I'll try to sum it up. So anyway, here we go. You're on the line. This is Mack. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mac. This is Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm good.
All right. I came in late, a few minutes late when you started your show there, and I think what I heard was you said the Constitution didn't establish the Supreme Court.
No.
And,
No. Okay. So for everybody out there in Haywire, I don't know if you could hear him or not, but he asked if I said that the Constitution didn't establish the Supreme Court. And perhaps, I don't know if maybe I misspoke, but what I did mean to say, if I did say that, was the Constitution never gave the ability of judicial review to the Supreme Court. So
okay.
That power, the ability to determine whether or not something is constitutional or not, that's not in the Constitution anywhere. And that is solely... That power is solely from them having the precedent in the case Marbury versus Madison.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Like I said, I missed the first few minutes, like about 7 minutes, I think. So that's why I wanted to clarify that I did come in late. So I probably missed something that you said or anything like that. And you talked about Marbury versus Madison, 1803. And basically, to sum it up, because that's a pretty good case to be reading on there. But what it basically sums it up is any laws repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. That's how I look at Marbury versus Madison.
Yes, sir. So to everybody on Haywire, I'm sorry, Steve. I just want to make sure if people are listening on Haywire, they don't hear a bunch of silence here. So
right.
So with what he was saying is that the Supreme Court, and this is Chief Justice John Marshall, he said that if a law is repugnant to the Constitution, it's null and void. So that is what his ruling was, and that's basically the precedent that he set in going forward into the future. Up until today, every time they determine that a law is unconstitutional, they're invoking the Marbury v. Madison actual judgment. So anyway, go ahead, Steve.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly about the how the Supreme Court is above everybody and can't be touched. I agree with your term limits. Also, with your term limits, I think that they should come under every so often a judicial review to see if they still. I'll bring one case up that just went through the Supreme Court. It had to do with basically, and I'm paraphrasing this, the police can wrongfully stop you on the grounds that they have a reasonable understanding of the law. Now, this was just a recent Supreme Court ruling. And what it was some guy was stopped. He had some drugs in his car or something like that. The stop was illegal, but the court said had reasonable understanding of the law. So they upheld him wrongfully being stopped by saying that the cop reasonably understood the law. Now, to me, how is the Supreme Court handing this out to people by saying, okay, the people that are supposed to understand the law can now be wrong and just claim they reasonably understand it and be right? Because we've all been told ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Especially for a person who's supposed to be enforcing that law. For those of you on Haywire, I just got confirmed that you guys absolutely could not hear what Steve is saying here. So, Steve, let me go ahead and just paraphrase what you said for everybody. There was a court case where people were getting stopped, and just because a cop thought that he had reasonable suspicion, even though he didn't have an understanding of the law, that was justified apparently. But long story short, and I agree with you, Steve, when somebody is supposed to be enforcing the law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And it would be no excuse if either you or I violated the law. No excuse whatsoever, even if we didn't know it. So I think, in my personal opinion, if you're a police officer and you're enforcing a law that doesn't exist, your punishment should be severe, in my personal opinion. I don't like the whole idea of well, that should be illegal, so I'm just going to arrest this guy and sort it out later. I think there should be some severe punishments, like kidnapping or something along those lines. If you take somebody and you don't even know what law they violated, you can't even cite it, you don't know what you're arresting them for, that should be highly, highly illegal, and our police should not have any special protection on that.
Exactly.
Anyway, did you have anything else on your mind, Steve?
Just one real quick thing that bugs me about the Supreme Court, too, being is that the checks and balances have been stripped away, and they've been sitting there. They're sitting there without having to worry about any retaliation. How is our Supreme Court, and this is what bugged me forever, how is our Supreme Court, these justices elected when they are considered either a conservative or a liberal or a Republican or a Democrat? Every justice that I've listened to that was being elected has a label put to them. So how can they be fair and balanced if they've got a label of a party put on them? And
that's a good question.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you calling. So here we go. For everybody on Haywire, what he asked was, how can a judge be elected? And he used the word elected. Just to clarify, they're actually appointed. And how can they be appointed if they are if they have some kind of label, such as a conservative or a liberal or a moderate or something along those lines? How can they be put on this for life if they have some kind of title? If they are already some kind of activist on one side of the aisle or other? And the reason why, Steve, and for everybody out there, the reason why is because they're appointed, and that's it. I mean, that's why. Because somebody who is a partisan, somebody who is on one side of the aisle, wants to pack the court with their own people. I mean, that is it. And this is why it's so dangerous. So moving back, let's talk about the actual the amendment to the Constitution I'm talking about. So before we talk about that again, let me just backtrack again. The Bill of Rights cannot be touched. I don't care what people say. It cannot be touched. I don't care. Unless you're going to add more stuff to it. Give me an 11th Bill of Rights that says that the government can't do something else. Yeah, that's great. But you can't take away those rights. Those rights weren't given to us from you. So that is the point. So don't be afraid of changing the Constitution, everybody. Don't worry about it. And especially, let me just point out the fact, if we ever went through like the actual process to amend the Constitution through the state convention, not through Congress, but through the state convention, it would take 14 states. That's 4 states to block an amendment to the Constitution. If we cannot whip up 14 states to oppose an amendment to, let's say, for example, the Second Amendment, okay? Let's say they were trying to get rid of the Second Amendment. If we can't get 14 states to block that, we've already lost. We've already lost. So Mark Levin, he actually recommends that we do the state convention. It's it's Article 5 of the Constitution, I believe. But anyway, it's a better way than going through Congress, even though it's never been done. It's more plausible to have these liberty amendments, as he refers to them, to be passed through the state convention rather than the Congress, because it doesn't seem possible. Even with a Republican Congress, it's very unlikely. But I digress. All right, so now that we understand that, as far as changing the Constitution, this amendment to restrict the Supreme Court, to balance the scales, because right now the Supreme Court, they have tipped the scales highly in their favor. They sit for life. They're the ultimate arbiter. They're not elected, they're appointed. So what we have here is a situation where we can't do anything about the Supreme Court. We got to have something. So this amendment would, A, put term limits. They're restricted to 12 years only, serving on the court. All right? At 12 years, they're gone. Why are term limits important? Well, the first thing is because I personally, I've never really hung out with anybody in Congress, so I can't say this from my own experience, but I have heard people say that, and I believe, I can't believe I'm quoting this guy. I believe it was Orrin Hatch that said, "I've never met anybody who left Congress a better person." But yeah, that's really a good quote, because people who go there and they stay there, they get inside this little bubble of D.C. They get stuck in this little D.C. bubble, and they get corrupted. Their mind gets warped. Look at Harry Reid. I want to tell you, Harry Reid was saying, audit the Fed. Anybody know that? Back in, I think this is the 80s or something like that, Harry Reid was saying audit the Fed. Now Harry Reid wouldn't let us even get a vote to audit the Fed. I wonder what happened. Some corruption. Somebody got paid off. Some palms got greased. Somebody got some arms twisted. Something along those lines. Something happened to change his mind. What could happen? He won't even let us vote on it? Something's going on. So, these people sitting on the court for their entire life, a president could appoint several of them, for example. I mean, I think Obama could have had an opportunity. I mean, all these people are old now. So, you know, if something happened and a president had an opportunity to appoint, I don't know, let's say 4 Supreme Court justices, you have just had a huge impact on the court, even 2 Supreme Court justices. Some of these cases, some of these really important cases, like the big one, oh man, I can't remember what it was called now. I think it's the Heller case. That one came down to 1 vote. Obamacare came down to 1 vote. 1 stinking vote. That's why 2 people on the court is such a big deal. And to have these people sit on the court for life, 1 president can affect the court for 50 years. 50 years. The only way to get rid of these judges sitting on the court for life is if they commit a crime and they go through an actual impeachment, an act of freaking Congress to get these guys off the bench. That's it. That's the only way. So, with that said, term limits are good. And in addition, I always bring this up. This is a quote that I use frequently, and I don't have it memorized per se, but it's paraphrased. It's Ben Franklin. He said that to return somebody to the citizenry is not to demean them in any way. So to take someone from a public servant back to a citizen is not to demean them. It's not a negative thing. It's actually a good thing, because as a public servant, you are a servant, and your masters are the citizenry. So to return someone to the citizenry is to return them to the state of master, and it's wrong to actually expect somebody to be in this perpetual state of servitude for their entire life. I use that quote a lot anytime I'm talking about the term limits. So all of these are great cases, and in fact, I think that argument was made in the Liberty Amendments. Now I'm remembering it, but I digress. Anyway, so what else? What else can we do? What else needs to be done? First and foremost, we need to have a way to get around them if they have something. If they actually decide that something is unconstitutional that we all disagree with, or that Congress can disagree with. I think that a supermajority, and that means 3/4 of people in Congress, if a supermajority of Congress says that, no, I know you said that was unconstitutional, but we're going to bypass you, I think that should be totally legit, and I think that should be included into the constitutional amendment. If we did that, we would solve a lot of problems here. We would create some checks and balances, put it back on the scale. You know, right now I feel like Congress has their thumb on the scale, and they've given themselves so much power. They've given themselves this power. It's unfortunate that is what happened. I mean, essentially, I think that anybody would feel kind of uncomfortable about a branch of government giving themselves or perhaps taking power for themselves. But I think at this point we've all come to expect this from the Supreme Court. So let's let them continue deciding whether or not things are constitutional or not. Let's actually create an amendment, put it in the Constitution, and give them that power if they want it so badly. But let's put checks and balances, term limits, and a way to actually get around it. That way we're not stuck with some bad stuff that we don't like. So, and also you could even have a time limit on how long you can do the supermajority. So, I think that may actually be somewhere in the Liberty Amendments as well. But after a certain period of time, make it so that there's like a window. So if the Supreme Court says that was unconstitutional, you have like a time limit until you can challenge it. And if the time runs out, that's it. That way you can't have, all of a sudden when, the Democrats or Republicans all get in power, president and Congress, they can't go back and just totally change everything on the books, Once it's set, after that time period, give it like, 24 months or something. After that period of time, you can't change it. It's set in stone. I think that's reasonable, and I think those are great checks and balances that we should have. But anyway, I'm going to cut to a commercial break because we blew through that one. I've been chatting like a chatty Cathy here for the last 45 minutes, and my voice is dying right now. So anyway, we're going to cut to a commercial break. We'll be right back. When we get back, we are going to enter into the next segment that I like to call the Mack Attack. So you're not going to want to miss this one. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com. And on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. My name is Mack Worley. This is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. And we've got an interesting segment coming up here I want to get to. For those of you out there in listener land, the Mack Pack, there are several ways that you can get in contact with the show. So if you have anything on your mind, you want to speak your mind, let your voice be heard, feel free to contact us. You can do so through Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. You can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Or you can give us a call. The only catch here with the calls is that if you're listening on Haywire Gulch, you are not going to be able to hear our callers today. I will fix that for the next episode. I promise you that. But basically, if you're a caller, you're only going to be able to be heard on blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. So just giving you guys a FYI, that's unfortunate today. We have a little techie problems here, but you can get a hold of us on Facebook too, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Feel free, hit us up there. Anyway, lots of ways you guys can contact us. So without, I really want to get into this next segment here. It's something that's been on my mind, really actually pressing on my mind quite a bit here because of the conversations that you guys have been having. And I want to actually highlight some of them in a moment. I won't call people out or anything. I just kind of want to paraphrase some of the things that I've read. And it's about the Muslim religion. And we're going to get into that today in what we like to call the Mack attack. All right. This is a segment of the show where I report about outrageous events in the news. And what I find is outrageous now is the attack right now of religious rights. I find this a little ridiculous. Now, please hear me out, okay? I'm not standing here saying that the future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. No, I'm not doing that. I'm also not saying that Islam is a religion of peace. How would I know? I'm not Muslim. I know nothing about Islam other than what I've heard, and I put very little stock in what I hear about through word of mouth. I know so many people that there's so much stuff that I've heard about it. Let me just point out one fact here about things that I actually do know about Islam. Number one, their religion to actually translate into another language, I believe, their actual Bible or Quran or whatever. So what they have is they have these like tribal leaders, and they basically commit this stuff to memory, or they write it down, and they're the ones that are translating. In most of these cases, these tribal leaders can't read. Okay, they can't read the language that it's written in. So what they do is they commit it to memory, and then they pass it down. Okay, it's like playing that telephone game. So you may have something that somebody said was, hey, that's in the religion of Islam. But how do you know? If you've never actually read the Quran, how do you know? You're taking somebody's word for it. You ever played that game telephone where things get lost in transmission? I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I'm not going to read the Quran. I don't have time. I don't have any interest. I'm not interested in the Quran at all. I'm not a religious guy to begin with. Okay, I come from a Christian background, but I personally am not religious. So anyway, with that said, though, I have the utmost respect for religious rights, and that's what this show is about. This show is not just about Second Amendment rights. This show is not just about your Fourth Amendment right. This show is not just about your freedom of speech. All right? It's also about your freedom of religion, assembly, all the other ones. I mean, every single right. Every right. I support your rights, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about my personal philosophy, and I use this is my philosophy of freedom. I use this to guide me in all my decisions because, for example, I may run across somebody who I absolutely do not like. I may despise this person, but my philosophy will guide me on how to react. Okay, so that's why I like that. And if you don't have a philosophy, you really should get one. You should really figure out, because just going off of things off of emotion, that's what the liberals do, guys. That's what the liberals do. All right. So first point I want to point out here. Okay. I heard somebody roughly say in our group on Facebook, so facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. In our group, I heard some people talking about actually rounding up Muslims and deporting them from our country. This is in response to the terror attack that happened in France. Really? You're going to round them up and deport them. Well, why not just do the same thing that we did to the Japanese Americans in World War II? Why not just round them up, put them in internment camps, and make sure that they're not going to hurt anybody, right? That was legitimate, right? No, that was wrong. And by the way, let's tie this into the judicial review. That was deemed totally constitutional, according to the Supreme Court. So, yay! Anyway, back to the point here, though. That's wrong. I don't really know what else I have to say about that. It's wrong. And hear me out before you close the little window here and leave and things like that, because I'm sure some of you disagree with me wholeheartedly, okay? And I understand. You're entitled to your opinion, and I would never say that you're not. But it's wrong. It's wrong to treat people like they don't have rights, all right? And more importantly, and what you should be really considering if you are one of the Muslim haters, and I'm going to get to the Muslim apologists in a moment, so don't feel like I'm singling you out, because I'm not. We're going to get to the Muslim apologists here in a second, okay? But if you are a Muslim hater and you think that these guys just need to, as somebody said in the group, they are the blight on a planet or blight on the earth or something along those lines, I disagree. I disagree with that. First of all, I'm not a big fan of generalizing people. I think that each person has their own path to take. People have a decision to make at some point, who they're going to be, how they're going to act, things along those lines. So, I'm not going to say that all black people act a certain way. I'm not going to say all Christians act a certain way. Everybody's different, Yes, there may be a majority of people doing one thing, maybe, I don't know, but that doesn't mean everybody's doing it. And who's to say that a majority's doing it? Anyway, point being, I'm not a big fan of generalizing. So, but if you are, for example, let's say you're a Christian and you just hate the religion of Islam, the Muslim religion. You think it's abhorrent, you think it's just an evil ideology, and you think it should be removed. Who's going to remove that religion? Who's going to capture these people, all right, and deport them? Or worse, I don't know what some other people may be thinking, but who's going to do all this? It's going to be the government. The government would do that. So you'd give the government the power to violate somebody's rights. That's what you would be doing if you said, hey, government, go after the Muslims. Because they're Muslim, that's the only evidence you have against them is that they're Muslim. Oh, yeah, they wear, the beekeeper chic. Go get them. No. Think about it for 1 second. You just gave the government the ability to single somebody out because of their religion, arrest somebody because of their religion. As a Christian, if you're a Christian, can you imagine that being turned on you? How would you feel if the government was rounding you up and deporting you? Doesn't matter how long you've been here, how long your family's been here, how American you are. I mean, you could be, apple pie and white bread all day long. You could be the most patriotic person in the world, but because you're a Christian, they're deporting you. You're not a threat. That's just your religion. And you may be saying, hey, my religion is of peace. And they may be saying, well, hey, remember the Crusades? You guys were violent, so we need to get you guys out of this country. It's not safe. So never mind the fact that, this country was founded on Christianity. But anyway, point being, that's one of those things that you don't want to do. You don't ever want to give the government precedent. Okay? Let's go back to the judicial review conversation. When you give the government precedent to do something, they do it. And they do it over and over and over again. And guess what? They don't give it up. And guess what? It just becomes part of the way we live our life. That becomes the country. That becomes the government. That becomes everything. That's your thing now. So government does not give up power, ever, willingly. The only way they do is when they're forced to. So, sorry, I'm coughing and snorting all over the place here, guys. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to go, but we'll keep going. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of coffee real quick. All right. So, we don't want to establish that precedent, okay? But in terms of hating other people and trying to put the other guy down, keep him down, all right? It's just not a good philosophy, all right? It's going to lead to people not liking you, and then conflict, and then all this turmoil. A lot of people will say that, okay, well, the Muslims will attack us because we treat them like this or we do that or whatever. All right, now we're getting into the apologists. Okay, so let me just point out here that there is a section of society that thinks that if we just leave the Muslims alone, that they will leave us alone. There is a section of our society that actually believes that if we just pulled out of Iraq, out of the Middle East, we stop supporting Israel, and we get out of that area entirely, and we just stay out of all their affairs and mind our own damn business, that the terrorists will just leave us alone. Really? Really? Let me just say, these people have a very, very, very long memory, all right? And secondly, no, they're not going to. If you have offended the prophet, you're screwed. You're going to be on their list. So whether or not you think that the war on terror is still going on, the war on terror is still going on. Although you may not be fighting it, it may be fighting you. So this is one of those things. This is a 1,000-year war. There's the only way to win this war is to not fight it or to win it through complete and total war of attrition. That's it. And I don't know what road we're going to take. I don't know how we're going to discourage the terrorists from attacking us. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I can tell you that us getting involved or not getting involved overseas and things like that, it's not going to matter. These people are still going to kill us. They still want to kill us. And moreover, on the fact of the religion being poisoned, okay? The religion has itself been hijacked. You play that telephone game where the tribal leaders are telling people what's in the Quran. What's to prevent somebody from actually just making something up that they see fit? These guys don't even know how to read it. They're just remembering it from memory anyway. What's to stop one guy who wants to be able to manipulate people? And one thing I heard recently, and I think it's very interesting to point out, okay? You all may have heard of Boko Haram. I just found this out, and I'm probably slaughtering the way it's pronounced anyway, but Boko, from what I understand, means book, and Haram means like unclean, so it's an unclean book, which they're implying that education is essentially poisoning the mind, and that education itself is bad. So reading is bad, education is bad. They keep these people illiterate. So you have a huge portion of population that is illiterate. Learning a religion from somebody who is probably illiterate too, telling them what is actually in the Quran, which could or could not be in it because they can't read it, and they heard it from somebody who probably couldn't read it, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So you create this mindset in these people that, and not all of them, again, not all Muslims are bad people, but the ones who are being built with this mindset, they're being spoon-fed this extremist propaganda. They actually believe it's true because this is what they're told, this is what they're taught. It's unfortunate, but this is the fact of the matter. War, civil rights movements, all these things, religion, all the battle for the hearts and the minds. That's all it is. Everything, hearts and minds. When it comes down to it, hearts and minds. The only way that you get people to fight on your side for anything, Whether or not it's metaphorically speaking or actually picking up a gun or a sword, it's through hearts and minds. A general speaking to his troops. Rally the troops. A preacher talking to his flock. Hearts and minds. That's what everything comes down to. And the Middle East, it's a different world. It is a different world. Now, I'm not saying that we belong in the Middle East. I'm not saying that at all. I think there are some times when we should be, getting involved with our interests, but there's other times that we have no business being there either. But I digress. Anyway, the whole thing, the whole reason why I'm talking about this is the personal philosophy. Okay, it's all about the rights. It's all about the rights. So to tell, or to say that you would like to have all the Muslims round up, you need to be able to imagine that one day that power could be turned against you. And even if it is not, it is a bad idea to have a government that has that ability to be able to round up people because of a particular religion. Even if they never turn it on you, that is completely unconstitutional. Violates the First Amendment 100%. And if you dare say that you are a constitutionalist, you dare say that you support the Constitution, you're an oath keeper, and you say that you swear to uphold and defend that oath to the Constitution, you're straight up lying if you're saying that you support Muslims being rounded up and deported. That's just my personal opinion, but I think it's rooted in fact. Anyway, guys, we're going to cut to another commercial break, and then we're going to wrap up the show here a little early. I can feel my voice is starting to go. So we're going to do a wrap-up here, and we'll probably got another 10 or 15 minutes left in the show. So anyway, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're going to cover some articles and things that I wanted to address here, and then we're going to get out of here. So here's a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey, Mac Pack. It's good to be back with you. All right, so we got some technical problems here again. I appreciate you guys sticking with us here throughout everything. And again, I apologize. My voice, I've done everything in my power to try to get better. I should literally be buying stock in NyQuil, DayQuil, things like that. I'm all hopped up on NyQuil and cough drops right now, guys. So look out. I'll come at you like a spider monkey. Anyway, I just noticed that in the Haywire Gulch Athletic Club, the group, that there's a whole bunch of comments in here, and I've been missing them the whole show. So I appreciate you guys commenting on this stuff here. I see a lot of people disagree with me on the Muslim thing. Hey, you know what? Like I said, you're entitled to your opinion. One thing that I would like to point out, and I've heard this too, all right? And it's concerning. It's definitely concerning. Somebody in the group said when the Muslims decide that they are a majority enough to attempt to take over this country, the United States, that is when I will take up arms and defend my country and family. Hey, you know what? I absolutely agree with you. I've heard people say that there are scriptures in the Quran, and again, this is heard people say. I've never read the Quran. Have you? I don't know. I don't know. If you've read the Quran, please let me know. But I've never read the Quran. But I've heard people say that that there's passages in there where they say that it's a religion of peace, but at the same time that you basically pretend to be peaceful until you become in the majority, and then you can attack your enemies, something along those lines. I don't know if that's true. I have no idea. I'm not going to speculate. But what I will tell you, all right, is if somebody's not attacking me, if somebody's not violating my rights, I don't care. I don't. If they're wringing their fists together and just I'm going to get them one day. I have a hard time believing that. Number one, this is going to be a bigger threat than the government. All right, and that to me is always where it comes back from. I'm not concerned about Muslims taking over my country, at least not more than I'm concerned about the government totally becoming a police state and locking me down and making me buy a product in order to become a citizen, like Obamacare. So, this is the issue. And even if, and I'm sure some people probably have read the Quran, and some of these people say yes, they have. So, if you have read the Quran, okay, hey, if it is legitimate and that's true, then it's a bad religion. Then what am I going to say? I don't bat for that team. You know what I mean? I'm not a Muslim. I'm not even religious. So if it is a bad religion, it's a bad religion. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be allowed to practice a bad religion. And I think that means that we should protect that religion even more, because if we don't defend things that we find abhorrent, what is the point of having rights anyway? Because you wouldn't need a right if everything was perfect. If everybody agreed with everything, you wouldn't need it as a right. It wouldn't matter, because nobody would try to take it away. Think about it. If for example, if we were all in heaven, all right, as I think it's William Walter, I believe is the guy's name. I'm probably slaughtering it. Anyway, he said he's an economist. He said that we wouldn't need a Bill of Rights if we were in heaven. The way you know that you've made it to hell is if they have a Bill of Rights. Things that the government can't do to you. So, I'm not saying to defend Islam. I'm not. I don't care about Islam. I'm neutral. I'm neutral to it. Just like I am, to all religions. If I was going to lean towards a religion, it would be Christianity. That's just me. But I'm agnostic. I don't know. I don't know where I fit in yet. One of these days I'll figure it out. But point being, if you're going to say that you support the freedom of religion, it's not just the freedom of your religion, all right? It's the freedom of all religion, to include the religions that you find abhorrent. That includes Satanism, all right? We talk about, I've mentioned this before, how there will be some kind of display, nativity scene. I was talking about this with Sounding Off with Tank and Tony on their show, and there was a Satanist group that wanted to put up a display at a nativity scene that was open to all religions. It created a stir. A lot of people got upset. Well, you know what? That's the exact reason why we have a First Amendment, because you need to protect things that people find abhorrent. If people think it's horrible, if people want to shut it down, people will. That's why it's protected. You don't have a right to shut someone else down. You don't have a right to tell somebody that they don't have a right to speak their mind. First of all, pray to the God of their choosing. I don't care if you want to worship a sock. That's your thing, man. You know, as long as you're not imposing your will on me. Now, here's my beef with the Muslim religion. It's this little thing called Sharia law. Some of you may be very familiar with it, but Sharia law essentially is a religious legal code. They have made their own legal code. So, you're a homosexual, we'll stone you to death. Okay? You want to commit adultery? We'll stone you to death. You steal something? We'll cut your hands off. Okay. All right. But the point is that Sharia law also requires people to do things. So what the Muslim community in some areas are trying to do is they'll move into an area. All of them will take over an area, basically, and all the Muslims will live there, and they will try to have a Sharia law that's not on the government books or anything, but they will enforce their own Sharia law within the community. So if a woman's walking down the street and you can see her legs, she's got some shorts on, everybody yell at that woman, cover your legs, you know, and people may even beat her, throw rocks at her. Things could happen. Who knows? I don't know what happens all the time, but it could. And then to even go a step further, they try to actually convince the government to establish Sharia law. So this is where I have a problem with this religion. And Muslim apologists, this is on you, all right? There's no way that you can justify this. I have freedoms too. I support your right to your religion. You can pray to Muhammad. You can pray to a sock. I don't care. But don't make me pray to it, okay? Don't make me cover up. Don't make my wife dress up like a beekeeper, all right? That's not on you. That's not your decision. These are my rights now, all right? Your rights end where mine begin. So anyway, that's my take on it, okay? So just show people respect, at least for the rights. I don't respect you don't have to respect the religion. You don't have to respect the person, but just respect the rights, because you know, if it can happen to them, if you can target them and take away their rights, then your rights can be taken away just as easily. Anyway, I got a few stories here I want to get to, guys. Let me see here. I'll go through some of these really quickly here. First of all, did you guys hear that George Zimmerman got arrested again? Pretty crazy. So he was denied bail. He was arrested, charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and apparently he threw, I believe it was a liquor bottle or something at his girlfriend. This guy just cannot stay out of the news. So, of course, Zimmerman is the person who was made famous after shooting Trayvon Martin. He was found not guilty in that murder case. You hear my voice going there. Anyway, but since then he's had a bunch of run-ins with law enforcement. He's had a hard time, and you know, I'm not sure what's going on with this guy. I'm not sure if he's legitimately a crazy guy that's out to just hurt people or something, or if he's just having a bad run of things. And can you imagine? I just want you guys to put yourself in his position, because I'm pretty sure I heard that he rescued somebody in a car accident shortly after the Trayvon Martin thing. So he rescued somebody. His life is going kind of crazy after that shooting. Whether or not you agree or disagree, he was found not guilty. And I've talked about that case before. Trayvon Martin jumped on him for following him around, and was MMA style ground and pound, punching him into the pavement. He felt threatened for his life and shot him. Now, Trayvon Martin was unarmed, but that doesn't mean that he's not a threat. So he was justified. The shooting was justified. Unfortunately, the loss of life is tragic, but that's what happens. That happens when you jump on somebody and punch them in the face, trying to pound them into the concrete. That you kind of accept the responsibility, the risks that could happen when you beat somebody up. Okay, so anyway, imagine that happened to you. You're this guy, George Zimmerman, and then you go save somebody in a car. Then you get pulled over. You have some issue with speeding with police officers. You have, I believe, a domestic dispute with your girlfriend, and now another domestic dispute. He's arrested, charged with aggravated assault with a weapon. Man, can't talk. All right, so just imagine like how crazy his life has to be right now, and all that stress. I imagine that has to be probably precipitating a lot of this stuff. And on top of it, I feel like he probably has a pretty crazy girlfriend. He should probably drop her. I'm just going to put it out there and just say he should probably drop her. Anyway, so with that said, I told you guys I would find a clip here for you. So give me 1 second. I'm going to play a very quick commercial, and then when we come back, I'm going to try to find that clip for you of Obama saying that the future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. I'll be right back.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
I told you it was going to be a quick commercial break. So right now, I'm loading up the clip here. This is Obama at the UN saying the future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. I believe this is Fox News.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
One more time.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
Okay, so that was Obama, his words. That's a 43-second clip. I don't know why you need it. It's in the first 5 seconds. Anyway, this is an interesting thing to note that he said this, because we were talking about earlier that he was saying that that Sony made a mistake by not sharing the movie at first. He kind of went after them, and then Sony did share the movie and release it. We're talking about the interview in the North Korea situation. But he didn't say that we should all be sharing these cartoons that these members of the press were killed for. We were talking about solidarity for the First Amendment right, freedom of speech, but we didn't get told by our president, who did say to share the movie and get that out in solidarity, but he didn't say to do the same thing with this. And is it because perhaps he thinks that
the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam?
I think so. I think that's probably it. I think that he's probably a little biased in this regard. That's just my personal opinion. Anyway, so I want to cut to another story here. This is actually on the Blaze. This is Hat Tip the Blaze. This is Dave Urbanski who wrote this. It's January 10th, 2015. Prime Minister of France is saying that we are at war against terrorism and radical Islam. And he says here that we are at war, but not at war against a religion, not against a civilization, but at war to defend our values, which are universal. Valls said in his speech Saturday night. This is from the Huffington Post that they're quoting here. It is a war against terrorism and radical Islam, against everything aimed at breaking solidarity, liberty, and fraternity. So, I would agree. This is a war against radical Islam. Radical Islam. Those who have been corrupted, perverted, or, even if the religion is just downright wrong. Maybe the entire religion is radical. I don't know. I'm not a Muslim. So what I will say is that I judge people based on the content of their character and their actions, and not based on their religion, their sexual orientation. I don't judge them based on their skin color. None of that stuff factors into how I react to people. What I would like to, I personally, I've never actually had even a Muslim friend, that would talk to me about his religion or anything. I actually knew some guys who probably were Muslim. I didn't really ask. I don't worry about stuff like that. That's not my thing. Anyway, but I'd like to learn more about it, I guess, but not enough to read the Quran. I really don't want to read the Quran. So anyway, with that said, guys, my voice is giving out here. I don't have a whole lot more left in me here. Let's see what else I got here. Okay, all right, I got one last thing here for you guys, and then we're going to cut out here. This is from Fox News, and this is Shep Smith, who is on the line with a New York Times reporter on live TV, and he ends up cutting him off because, in my opinion, I think he kind of pushed his buttons a little bit. Shepard got a little angry at this guy, and I'll let you guys hear the clip. Here it is.
Well, we need to be careful in the moments after such a thing.
You don't have to tell me that.
Well, that's I hope true. And there are warnings. Even MI5, the head of MI5, which is like the British FBI, gave a speech yesterday in which he warned that Al-Qaeda in the Middle East was planning larger attacks, including against London. It's very hard. It's very easy to draw lines between all these things and make them one, but there's no question that this attack and the sense of a cell in France, that it wasn't just two brothers, but they had friends and accomplices, has shaken people very, very badly. And there'll be lots of questions about why Intel didn't know what was going on. Did they take these brothers seriously enough? Could this have been prevented? The magazine Charlie Hebdo had been a major target for a long time.
Please leave the prompter on this
sufficiently protected. Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know the mic was up. I need the prompter to go back to this guest, not to that. And I'm very curious about, you said we need to be careful. On what matter did you think we were not careful based on what you just said and on what we just reported, Mr. Erlanger?
I mean, frankly, I have not been listening very carefully.
So you just said that because
to
what?
you. No, I'm not getting in a fight with you. I'm simply saying that, look, you asked me to come and talk to you. I'm telling you what I think I know.
What you told me is that you thought we needed to be careful, and what I can report to you, sir, is that we're being very careful.
Either you're going to let me talk or you're not.
Steve Erlanger from the New York Times. It's nice to speak with you. Thanks very much. Ed Henry on the North Lawn at the White House.
That is hilarious. Anyway, Shep Smith from Fox News, he essentially just hung up on that guy very politely, I thought. But one thing that I'm not sure what the guy was talking about. I'm not sure why he said that we need to be careful when we're talking about this. A lot of people are being careful when they're and they were referring to the attack in France. So a lot of people are really concerned right now. They're concerned that they need to be careful about what they say. And I'm telling you right now, guys, I'm going to say what's on my mind. I'm not afraid. I hope that you guys say what's on your mind as well. Do not let the terrorists win. It's really important that we come together, just like with the interview. We stand in solidarity, all right? We do not let these bullies bully us. Understand that that's what they want. That's what they want. They want you to think that if you say something, they'll track you down no matter how little of a guy you are and rub you out. That's what they want. But the fact is, if we all stand up and just continue to say, no, you're not going to silence us, I don't care. They can't. They don't win. They don't win. And this is the same kind of concept too. That for me, this is why I'm so discouraged by the things like the National Defense Authorization Act and the Patriot Act. Especially when it comes to the war on terrorism. I think that was actually a horrible loss for our country. Allowing the terrorists to affect that kind of change within our rights. The terrorists did have a big victory when we passed the Patriot Act. We changed the way that our government can deal with us. We gave them more power than they had, more power than they should have had. And again, government doesn't get rid of power. Government will never give up power willingly. National Defense Authorization Act, the icing on the cake, made it even worse. They can assassinate American citizens who are suspected terrorists. Suspected. You ever been suspected of a crime? You ever been suspected that maybe you did something that you didn't do, even if it wasn't a crime? What if somebody said, you know what, if I suspect you did it, I can kill you for anything, you know. Hey, I suspect that you used a cup without a cup, one of those things, those trays that you put the cups on. Wow, I can't believe I can't remember. A coaster. There we go. I suspect that you put your cup on the coffee table without using a coaster. You can be killed. It wasn't even me. Yeah, well, who cares? I suspect it. And who's in charge of these suspicions? The government. The governments are the ones who decide who's the terrorist, who's not. They decide who loses the rights and who doesn't. They decide who's indefinitely detained, tortured, waterboarded. You lose all your rights. Suspend habeas corpus. You become, this is a fancy new term that I learned. It's actually kind of interesting. You guys may find it interesting as well. I'm studying the court case and the precedent and all the stuff that went behind why we started trying American citizens who are considered terrorists as enemy combatants, and instead of as somebody who acted against American forces, because we have laws here that we can enforce that way. So in terms of this, they created this. I believe this is something v. Rumsfeld. I think it was Hamar v. Rumsfeld, from Hamad maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. V. Rumsfeld. And this guy was an American citizen who was picked up around 2001 in Afghanistan, and he was acting against American forces. And they said that he needed to be tried, he was arguing that he needed to be tried in a court. And the government was saying, no, he's an enemy combatant. And anyway, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court eventually upheld this. This is another one of those cases, judicial review. Supreme Court upheld that habeas corpus, your right to a trial, your right to an attorney, your right to, everything that we take for granted. When you can face your accuser, you have evidence, you can see the evidence brought against you. Those things, it's habeas corpus. That's what that is. So the Supreme Court decided that the government, if you are considered an enemy combatant by the government, that you can have your habeas corpus rights suspended, and you can be indefinitely detained, waterboarded. Your constitutional rights do not apply to you. You don't have a right to an attorney, no right to a trial, no speedy trial, by the way, either. So if you don't even have a trial. So anyway, I just think it's important to note that the Supreme Court, they've gotten so big, and it's dangerous when the Supreme Court can say, yeah, you know what, I think that the government should have that right. These are the guys that are telling us that what can and cannot be done. I think there needs to be some definite checks and balances put on them. I got one last video for you guys. I've been holding on to this one for a while, actually. And I want to comment on this because, things are going to be starting to heat up here in the next few months with the Clinton administration, with their campaigning and everything like that. And boy, do I got a bone to pick with Hillary Clinton. And it's also a bone to pick with Obama. But I wonder if you guys can catch the similarities between these clips here. I'll go ahead and play the first clip, and it's President Obama, and he's talking about how you didn't build that. So here's President Obama. If it'll load.
If you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. You didn't get there on your own. I'm always struck by people who think, well, it must be because I was just so smart. There are a lot of smart people out there. It must be because I worked harder than everybody else. Let me tell you something. There are a whole bunch of hard-working people out there.
All right, so that's President Obama saying that if you've been successful, you didn't do that. It wasn't because you were smart. It wasn't because you were hardworking. It wasn't because you were both of those things. I'm here to tell you that if you were successful, one of three things happened. And in most cases, two of these have to happen. The first one, you have to be smart and you have to be hardworking. Okay? Those two things have to happen. All right? And if one of those two things don't happen, another thing has to happen. You have to be lucky, all right? So you can not be smart, but you could be hardworking and be lucky, and you can be successful. You could not be hardworking and be lucky and smart, but you're not going to make it. You will not stand the test of time, because just because you're smart doesn't mean you're going to make it. Just because you're lucky doesn't mean you're going to make it. You have to be hardworking to honestly be a success, build yourself up from the ground up. I disagree with this. This is the exact opposite of capitalism right here, guys. This is what the liberal platform is speaking to right now. Everything's collective, all right? He's talking about the people that you work for, or that work for you. Those people help build it. Those people are responsible for it. The temp agencies, people that came over and did the manual labor for you, those people are responsible for your success. Could anybody have done those jobs? Those are low-skill jobs. You know, this is the kind of stuff that bothers me. Yes, there are people in your company that are instrumental, that are irreplaceable. And I hope that each one of you out there are the irreplaceable people in your company. If you're a janitor, be the best damn janitor in the world. If you are a dentist, be the best dentist. If you're a lawyer, be a best lawyer. But be that irreplaceable person. The point is, though, is that we did get there with help. There are people that are irreplaceable. However, it couldn't have gotten done without the people who are leading and pushing forward. They're hardworking, they're smart, and some of them are just downright lucky. I believe in capitalism. I think that this system of government, this way that we live, has pulled more people out of poverty than any other form of government in the world. That's verifiable. There is no other form of government that has pulled this many people out of poverty. And we can look at the social programs, the social experiments of other countries like communists, socialists, Marxists, all the other ists out there that are for collectivists. You know, that they're for the collective. They believe that everything should be divided equally. Okay, so let's look at Cuba, for example. Cuba, it's been in the news recently, and we've talked about it. But one thing that's interesting with Cuba is that communism was supposed to be a really good thing for Cuba. Everything was going to be fair. When Castro got on the scene, he was saying, look, everybody's going to have a job. Everybody's going to make money. This is what everybody's going to have. It's going to all be divided equally. It's going to be a good thing. And then when he did take power, turned out it wasn't a good thing. Not all the promises were kept, because you know what happens when you get all the power in the government? You gain all the support from the people that put you in power, or at least that stand by and let you take power. You get all that support, and then when you get the power, you don't need the people anymore. This is ultimately what I'm concerned about. This is what I keep screaming about all the time, to the point of losing my voice, as I'm clearly doing now. Anyway, we got 11 minutes left in the show here. I'm going to push through this, guys. I got some old videos that I've been sitting here waiting to use for a while. So I got some old material I've just been sitting on. So anyway, I got a clip here, and I believe this is Reason TV. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I want to play the Clinton thing. I forgot all about it. Here's Clinton, sounding pretty familiar. Hillary Clinton. Here she goes.
Don't let anybody tell you that, it's corporations and businesses that create jobs. That old theory, trickle-down economics. That has been tried. That has failed. It has failed rather spectacularly. One of the things my husband says when people say, well, what did you bring to Washington? He said, well, I brought arithmetic. And
yeah, he brought arithmetic. This is the guy that had trouble figuring out what the word is meant. And I believe he actually used that in the same sentence where he asked, it depends on what you think the definition of the word is. So apparently he knew what the word meant. He used it to describe the question there. So anyway, I've already said how I feel about that. The thing about Hillary, and in terms of these social programs, and you didn't build that and things like that, this is what the left is trying to set up, man. They are trying to get us on a path to where everything's going to be provided from the government. You're going to be on the government teat at one form or another, and if you're not on it, at some point you're going to just give up because they're going to restrict you and hold you down with so much red tape. We cannot handle another 8 years of Hillary. I'll tell you right now, this country will not be the same after another 8 years of Hillary. I'm very concerned, and I want to vote Libertarian. Honestly, Gary Johnson, he's looking pretty good for me. Not really a fan of any of the Republican establishment guys. Ted Cruz, I'm kind of okay on. Rand Paul, I don't like him. I really don't like him, and for some reason he's got this liberty feel to him that everybody keeks going to him. But I'm telling you, this guy's a deal maker. He's a boner. He's one of those John Boners, John Boehner. Anyway, he's a deal maker. He's willing to make sacrifices. He's willing to sacrifice his principles to get ahead. And I'm done playing that game. I'm not going to vote for people who are going to do that, who aren't going to stand up and hold true to their values. Right now, I like Ted Cruz, but the problem with Ted Cruz is that he's got some affiliations with the banking world through his wife that I don't really like, and I'm kind of concerned about. I don't know if he's also all talk. We'll see. I guess we'll see. I don't know how things are going to go, but I'm telling you, Ted Cruz, out of all the candidates in the Republican Party, I can't see myself voting for anybody but Ted Cruz. And as far as what I would like to vote for is Gary Johnson. But again, I'm concerned that if a lot of people in the country, or a big portion of the people in the country, decide I don't want to turn out for the Republican Party, let's vote either third party or just not vote at all. Hillary's going to get elected, and boom, we've got another 8 years of this progressive nonsense. So anyway, let's move on. The last few minutes of the show, this be a nice little change here. So I got a clip here from Reason TV. It's the 5 top most anti-libertarian shows ever. I thought this would be fun. So anyway, here we go.
A little while ago, we tallied up the 5 best libertarian TV shows ever. Now it's time to look at the 5 TV shows that are the absolute worst from a libertarian perspective. To be fair, just about everyone hates this sanctimonious drama created by Aaron Sorkin. The newsroom follows the on-air tantrums of Will McAvoy, a preening, self-righteous anchorman who can't open his mouth without inveighing against capitalism, gun rights, or political speech with which he doesn't agree. It's like Ron Burgundy, but unintentionally funny.
They can call themselves the Tea Party. They can call themselves conservatives. But we should call them what they are, the American Taliban.
Holy crap.
Debuting only a couple of months after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, 24 exists as nothing less than agitprop for the national security state and the righteous evisceration of civil liberties. Super Agent Jack Bauer is constantly thwarting presidential assassinations, dirty bomb detonations, and drug cartel monsters through a mix of state-sanctioned torture, black bag jobs, and good old-fashioned abrogation of the Constitution.
Jack, there's something called due process. It's why we've got judges and juries and laws.
Don't you dare tell me about the law.
Due process, never heard of it.
The power is yours.
This show suckled millennials on the teat of dramatically defective environmentalism in the early 1990s. The spirit of the planet, Gaia, sends 5 rings to kids located all around the globe that give rise to the superpowered Captain Planet. Remember, kids, capitalism is evil and destructive unless you're creating preachy cartoons for Ted Turner's TBS.
These new drip nets sure beat the old-fashioned way of fishing.
Just like strip mining the ocean. There won't be a living thing left once I'm through. And every fish in those nets is money in my pocket.
The National Football League isn't just the wealthiest sports league on the planet. It's the most morally bankrupt. Forget about ongoing controversies over the league's domestic violence policies and the Redskins' name. The NFL is the ultimate poster child for corporate welfare, state-sanctioned cartelization, and government-granted privilege. Sure, the games themselves are must-see TV, but the political economy of the league, which is organized as a nonprofit due to a special act of Congress, stinks worse than the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers ever did.
We have seen all too much of the NFL doing wrong.
The original series takes place in a future where humanity has finally transcended all forms of warfare, cash transactions, and shirts with collars. The Starship Enterprise's adventures throughout the galaxy are supposedly guided by the Federation's Prime Directive, which forbids humans from intervening in the domestic affairs of the planets they visit. And yet, when he's not engaging in zero-gravity sex with an endless procession of comely space aliens, Captain James T. Kirk is mucking around with every civilization from here to the Romulan neutral zone like LBJ on Viagra.
These words and the words that follow, they must apply to everyone or they mean nothing. Do you understand?
I do not fully understand.
Well, what do you think of our picks? What did we get right and what did we blow completely? Set your phasers to stun and let us know in the comments. For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
All right, so I'm actually curious what you guys have to say about their picks here. For me, I want to mention one in particular, the NFL. Go ahead and respond on Twitter for this one, if you guys would. I'd like to read them off on the next show if you guys are interested. What are your picks for the most anti-libertarian or anti-liberty, anti-constitution show? Something along those lines. Give me at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter or twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow if you want to just go straight there. And tweet me and let me know what you guys think. Did they get these picks right? For me, I think that the NFL is absolutely anti-libertarian. If you guys have been following, a lot of the controversy around there, obviously, you can forget about all the stuff like they said, the Redskins and all that stuff. Let's talk about the taxpayer money thing, okay? These millionaires playing a game, millionaires getting millionaire ad endorsements and all this stuff, they are asking taxpayers, Joe Schmo taxpayer, you and me, to pay for stadiums that get built. And these are million-dollar companies. Now, I always make the comparison where, like, a security guard has to buy his own gun or, his own uniform. He's investing into his business. Why can't a millionaire invest into his own business, which is making him millions of dollars? Why does it have to come out of my pocket so he can play a game, especially if I don't want to give that? If it won't benefit me in any way, shape, or form, it may benefit some people who have businesses in those areas and things like that. But if I'm not one of those people, why am I paying for him to have some kind of stadium? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I think that is absolutely the most anti-libertarian show that you can ever watch is the NFL. Anyway. With that said, guys, we're going to go ahead and cut out, guys. I really appreciate you all tuning in today. I had a lot of fun with you, and I cannot believe I made it through it. By next week, my vocal cords should be rested and ready to go, and we'll be back on the air 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday at blogtalkradio.com. Also now simulcasted at haywiregulch.com in the live feed. Don't forget to check us out at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. OnTheMoveShow.com is our website. Got all of our original content on there. Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.